Joining me today is Jay Colbinson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Docebo. Jay has 2 decades of experience in training and technology. His skills and experience enable him to effectively address complex business challenges, and he's going to share some of that expertise with us today. So without further ado, Jay, I will let you take over.
All right, sounds good. Let me just get the screen share going. Okay, you see my screen okay?
Yes, so you can see it.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, thank you everyone. Appreciate you all spending this time with me. I hope that everyone's preparing for some wonderful holidays and a good break. For the next half hour or so, we're going to talk about some strategies and insights around training technology management, specifically focused around consolidation and simplification to enable scale while providing positive learner experiences you need to hopefully fuel growth within your organization. So a little bit about me. I'm currently the Senior Product Marketing Manager for the Learn platform here at Docebo, and I've been a Docebian for about 4 months now, which is not a very long time. However, I came from being a customer of Docebo for over a decade, so a lot of the stuff I'll be talking about are things that I did while using the Docebo platform, but in a customer capacity. My background is in IT. So just at the turn of 2000, I was working in an IT department doing everything from computer repair to implementing business systems like ERPs and productivity tools, big systems like that. And then my first LMS implementation came along. And this is 2000, 2001. So we were optimizing content for 56K modems, if that gives you, an idea of where that fits into the technology part of the world. I spent about 8 years in semiconductor at that company, managing and growing that platform, as well as leveraging my creative skills. Around that time was when the Adobe and Macromedia type content development and artistic type tools were rising. So think of Flash and Photoshop and Premiere, sort of the beginnings of those. Because I had been in an IT department and had access to those softwares, I was using them in a personal capacity and building up some skill sets there. Little did I know that that was going to help me balance both sides of the training goals that were ahead of me around, doing platform implementation, but also being able to develop the content because I could make animations and things like that in tools like Flash, which was big at the time for e-learning. So after that, I did a brief stint in the government sector, traveling and delivering training to various branches of our military services, doing training for, explosives detection equipment, trying to find IEDs and explosives in images and scans before they would arrive places and potentially cause harm. So that was great experience in developing training programs that had absolutely crazy requirements, like they had to work on a laptop in a desert with possibly no internet connection. For somebody there, got a lot of experience doing some more difficult training development requirements. And then after all said and done, for the past 13 years with those two, I moved to a very large life science company where I led video production, live event production, and training for customer training for a few parts of that organization over my time there. And including in that was finding and implementing Docebo to solve for some various use case training challenges that I'll be sharing more with you in coming slides. So after being a Docebo customer for a long time and serving on their advisory community, I started working with folks there. I got the opportunity a few months ago to make the jump over to Docebo, and now I serve as sort of the go-between between our product and engineering folks and our customers, helping transfer the value and the knowledge of the features of the platform that come out from a product feature type standpoint to be able to speak to customer about the value of the outcomes with that. So that's a bit about me. Docebo, we see ourselves as enablers and learning partners for your business. We are global. We have teams and customers around the globe to support our customers wherever they need learning to be. And then I have one more slide for Docebo with a bunch of great facts on here. We're over 800 employees worldwide. We have over 3,600 customers. I'm not going to, maybe despite a lot of other presentations that have happened this year, I'm going to try to go minimal on AI. I have some things that I want to show you, including a video that have to do with AI through the course of this presentation. But Docebo has been leveraging AI for more than 5 years. And we recognize that AI is an important part of the future of learning and business success. So that's a critical part of our innovation. And we've got some really cool things to show you there. So let's jump into the agenda a bit. I tried to match up the topics that I want to cover with the themes mentioned in the webinar description so you can get a feel of how we'll tie it all back to the takeaways. We'll talk about what training management means to me and some best practices and technology to support those needs. We'll look at some strategies, tools, and costs, but I want to call out that not all the costs I'll be talking about are always dollars. There's other costs. I have a slide that goes into that a bit. I want to approach talking about multi-use cases in a single platform and how that both simplifies things for you, yet it also adds some complexities at the same time. And how are we going to manage that? How do we establish systems of governance so that we can, net more scale and success from the simplification rather than make a giant mess and get overtaken by the complexities we introduce? So we'll get into each one of those topics, bit by bit, and that's kind of the areas I want you to see for takeaways. And I had to give a little nod here to one of my favorite movies and creators from Lumbergh from Office Space here, and throw up a meme just to get the conversation going. But I really like how this calls out the responsibility of the role here. We can get kind of focused sometimes as training professionals on these micro missions of delivering compliance and HR type trainings, harassment trainings, ethics trainings, and these cycles that go around, kind of like that necessary evil. But I think the responsibility of this role is much, much bigger. As a training manager or training leader, you can be this at any level. You ultimately, like when you allow this role to embody the goals and objectives that you see here on the left, it will help define the requirements for technology investments, for strategies and approaches. It helps get that end game vision. And when you have that in mind, you can make more informed decisions and select the right path. This helps falling into traps like purchasing technologies because you got a really, flashy sales demo and or being short-sighted and reactive to small behaviors instead of addressing training holistically. If you look at the items on the side, I'll just call out a couple. Cost savings is usually something that is used to justify a training department's existence or in further investment. How many dollars can we save by bringing something online and not having people sit in classrooms all day? Kind of like the age-old ROI metrics for justifying training. But after a couple of years of that, if you're lucky, then you'll get a leader that'll come in and say, yeah, that's great, you're saving me money, but how am I also going to grow the top line as well? So being able to pick your head up out of maybe some of those day-to-day or types of necessary evil type things that we have to deal with as training developers and training professionals and look at some of these broader principles and goals and objectives, we can do things like, just grabbing the top line growth there. Sure, you can maybe put some courses up for sale and through in some kind of e-commerce enablement situation. One step even further than that. There was a time where I had to do training for a product that we sold that usually was purchased by other companies. So in that scenario, the person purchasing the product was not necessarily the user of the product. So when we looked at our list of people that we were going to market upgrades and consumables and things to, we had data on who bought the product, which was really useless when it comes to trying to market to them for further enhancements on the product or something like that. It was just falling on deaf ears. But the people coming into the training platform to learn how to use the product were the people that had the products in their hands. And so connecting our training data to our marketing data to fuel our lead generation and tying that back to value, now you've created an alternative revenue stream that you can attribute to your training department. And if you don't every once in a while pick up and start thinking about how you can be attached to these things, and I think that can happen at any level. So whether you're a director of a whole training organization or you're an individual contributor creating content, being open to address any of these will lead to bigger and better things. You're likely touching a few of these items today. So definitely keep those in mind to fuel your program growth. So I thought about talking about best practices, but when you think about it, there's really no best. There might be a best for a given situation, and I'm sure there are patterns that we can look at. But when I thought about giving this presentation and who might be in the audience listening, I felt that the persona I could most be helpful to is the person who's here today to try to find a way to start or improve their current training program. Having done this several times over the past couple of decades and having made a ton of mistakes, having grinded out tons of hours on several levels as the doer of the doing or leading the teams putting in all the hard work, the best I can offer you are some insights and lessons I learned along the way in hopes that there'll be pieces you can glean to raise the bar at your organizations. So the tools that you choose, and that's why the imagery slide here is to try to illustrate like tools in a tool belt is what I've always thought of it as. It should be those that support your specific end goals. And I tried to bucket things into some categories here that I want to make sure my tools are always ready to address. So, always be asking yourself about your current state. Are you starting as a team of one? Are you someone who's going to lead a team, and are you inheriting that team? And what do their skill sets look like? Sometimes you can't always choose. And these days, training teams can be everything from seasoned instructional designers with tons of experience, complementary skill sets. Sometimes they're SMEs that have just turned into trainers and they don't have a lot of formal instructional design skill sets. It can really be all over the map. And it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, but it's more that I understand exactly what puzzle pieces I do have, what puzzle pieces I don't have. And it runs through all of these categories. Like, what does your leader want? How is your IT department, right? Are you implementing a training platform and you don't really have a lot of the technical experiences, and your IT department's going to be taking that? What does that trade-off mean for things? Are they open and lax, or are they super secure and tight and controlling? So figuring out where the ownership lies and what the benefits of that will be. This will all help you choose the right tools for the right job ahead. And it will help you get your strategy together that will give you the results you need to grow. And you will need the technologies that enable you to define success and then actually get there. So it's hard enough to get all of that together. On top of that, the one thing that you can be sure will never change is that stuff will keep changing as business grows. So you have to be prepared for that too. So we'll go through some things here that will hopefully help you in all of those areas. But I wanted to call out that everything that I look at for a successful program kind of falls into these buckets. So I look at them as wanting to make sure those are areas that we have covered. So this is the cost standpoint. I put this slide up there. I find myself sometimes saying this saying a lot. There's a little write-up underneath about where it comes from I found was historically interesting. But I think this really does a great job about the importance of setting expectations. I can't say that more enough. And this is in all directions. This is upwards with my leadership. This is with the learners that I would support. There's no magic software, magic tool, one size fits all, one-stop shop. I walked around DevLearn when I did this presentation first, and you walk into almost every booth. I want to be the one-stop shop. We are your one-stop shop. Like, everybody can't be the one-stop shop. There's no AI megamind. That's AI is the thing this year that we've all been talking about that just makes stuff work, right? You could be facing that way. and it's all around you. So setting expectations properly and not getting too sucked into that kind of idea so that you can be successful and deliver on what is promised is very important. Managing the expectations in the upwards direction. So you might have a leader that doesn't understand what you really do, right? They might be a good leader, a good manager, but when it comes to the day-to-day technology implementation and starting to get into the weeds, or what kind of level of effort does it take to develop a training program? I remember that being something, trying to convince leadership, yeah, it takes 120 hours to develop 1 hour of training and justify those numbers. Sometimes it's really hard for somebody at a higher level to recognize that stuff, and managing those expectations properly is important. So you may get a flashy sales demo that makes everything seem like you're just a few clicks away from some hands-off training program management experience. But at the end of the day, you're going to be responsible for learners and learner experiences. And these learners will have expectations that everything is just going to work. And if they don't, it's going to be because your tool is broken and something's not right. So setting these expectations right away, incredibly important. And as the one in control of your training destiny, being prepared that it will take thought and work and strategy. And the more you can communicate that up and down, the more that you can get what you need along the way. Being an advocate for yourself, celebrating the successes, telling the stories as you move through, is going to be the challenge, and it isn't easy, but even though there isn't an easy button, there are tons of helpful tools and resources that you can put in this tool belt that I was talking about, and we'll spend the remainder of time talking about what they are, well, at least from my perspective, and what I went through, what they were for me, and how I leveraged them, and maybe it would apply to you, or if not, you can see how it can be tweaked to apply to your individual situations. So I want to start off with the first use case and example strategy. I want to keep it very generic. So let's just say like you walk into a smaller organization that's trying to figure out how to get a training program off the ground, or they haven't even tried yet, and it needs to start and be built from scratch. There's a few basic components. I created a little like infographic on the right just to quickly capture from let's take a customer training use case example. You're going to need a team, and that team could be a team of one. It could be 2, 5, whatever it is. But if you're looking at a single use case, you're going to need a team of developers. You're going to need some content that you need developed, and then you're going to need a way to launch it. So that end-to-end process kind of goes 1, 2, 3 along the right. When you start digging into each one of these and you look at your team, are you a team of one and your skill sets maybe you're an instructional designer, don't have a lot of LMS administration capabilities. Maybe it's the other way around and you don't have any content development and you're all LMS administration. And from there, are you just basic tasks in an LMS or super deep into the technical implementation and strategy? If you're on the content side, is it just instructional designer, or do you go into the multimedia simulation development? Figuring out the puzzle pieces you have and the ones you don't help with the requirements for your strategy and what you can do moving forward from there. How is your content creation going to be supported? So looking at your SMEs that you have available, are they tech savvy? The enablement you build into your content creation to best support your SMEs, because let's face it, you need them for their knowledge. You don't want to turn them into full-on instructional designers in a lot of cases. You want to quickly get the stuff out of their brains. So what kind of tools, technologies can I pull out of my tool belt that will enable those SMEs to just quickly give me the things I need, but not really give them that second job? Treating that as a priority and putting those down as your requirements for the solutions you go and look at is supremely important to help that not be a roadblocker and keep things moving and keep this on track. And then lastly, launching everything. What are we going to launch this on? Do we have a learning management system already? Do we need to go get one and therefore need to define our requirements in such a way that's based off of 1 and 2 that will help us go pick the right one? Or do we have one already and are we happy with that? Or is it something that we're kind of stuck in? So what we're trying to get to here at the end of the day, when you break it down into these areas, is what is our, a lot of people use MVP or minimum viable product. I don't know how true this is, but a couple of years ago, I worked with a project team that came from Amazon, and they said, what we used at Amazon was a minimum lovable product. I really liked that um, a categorization for that, because it was just the minimum viable product seemed like I was just doing the bare minimum. So what do we have here? If we look at these three categories, how do we sum this all up to kind of get what that looks like so we can execute on that strategy? How does that end-to-end process fit together? And what do we need to move forward? So this is kind of going through that process in a generic way with some buckets and some areas to focus on to make sure we get the right thing. And now I'll move into an exact example. So, or specific example. So this actually happened to me. That's why I pulled together the generic one in this way. So when I started at my last organization about 13 years ago, I walked into a training department that didn't exist yet. It was, so I was brought in as a team of one to start building. At the time, they sold a product that was, it's an X-ray fluorescence analyzer. So you can see in the little thumbnail pictures here, this like gun that the person's holding and shooting up against a wall. This was a X-ray analyzer. So that thing actually shoots X-rays into something. And based on how the X-rays bounce back into the instrument, it will tell you, if you remember the periodic table from high school, it will tell you what element is in something and how much of that element is in something. So really cool. It's like a Star Trek tricorder type tool or product to work with. Very cool. Tens of thousands of dollars for these things, used in all sorts of different industries. So, sometimes my learner was, a scientist, and sometimes my learner was a barely sixth grade educated scrapyard dealer scanning metal to try to figure out how much to pay someone for some scrap metal. And you can imagine the challenges and personalization requirements around developing that learning that needed to happen so that we could give the right information to the right people the right way. The classes at the time when I came in were all instructor led. So and given around the country. So like that means if I spent $40,000 on one of these things, my next step was to go find the soonest, closest class that was being given, pay to go there, take the training, get the certificate, and then go be able to use my instrument in whatever state, because now I'd be allowed and get my license to operate and be allowed to do it. So huge bottleneck to growth and scale for the company and the product was training. And we had partners, reps and distributors that sold these instruments that were all doing the training different ways. So completely non-standard in how it was being delivered. So my mission was to come in and move this stuff online so anyone could take it anywhere, anytime without incurring the extra cost or time, standardize the content, implement a system that would do this, because at the time the company did not have an externally facing LMS, and get that content to satisfy our regulatory requirements. So I found at the time, that's when my relationship began with Docebo as a customer. I evaluated a couple of platforms. This was super early on in both theirs and my history. And even back then, I think it was around 2013, 2014 when we actually implemented the platform. Even back then, they had one thing that really set them apart, which was called an extended enterprising capability. This is what allowed for the personalization of the platform to that audience. I was allowed to bring in this external LMS into the company because I was charged with the requirements that I can do this, but if anybody else needs to use the platform that for customer training, they're not going to go implement their own LMS. This has to be scalable and repeatable. So I was immediately given my success criteria, because if it all works, other people are going to want to use that. We're going to want that to be something that I just copy and paste, and not something that I have to rebuild all over again and potentially find out I can't do, because if you do it one way for these people, you can't do it that way for those people. So building that requirement in up front really helped. I will move from this example after this was implemented. What you see there is a screenshot of what basically that landing page looked like. Very simple, one, because of the times, we're talking 10 years ago, but also even today I would make the page the same way. And today the page still does look the same way because, like I said, some of those people just log in and all they care about is getting their certificate and going so that they can go use their instrument. And that's exactly what's up front in your face on the first screen you see. The 4 courses you could probably need to take, how to print out your certificate, and how to get on your way. And so the platform really allowed us for that persona to provide that journey and move forward. And if someone else comes along with a different set of requirements, I can copy and paste and they can do something different and that learner will have something different. So having all of those things that tie back to those buckets that I was showing earlier in play first before moving forward was something that allowed what I'm going to show you in some future slides to be able to happen. So that's that single use case. I'm going to pause here for a second because and I don't know if there's any chat. I can't see the chat, but when I've told this story a bunch of times before, and often what I get is, yeah, well, Jay, you were the team of one, but you said you had content development experience and you also had LMS administrative experience, and you could wear both those hats. What if I'm in a position where I only have one or the other because I'm coming from a career change or a different set of experiences? How am I going to be able to make this transferable and go through it? And this will be my one call out to some AI stuff. I really feel like addressing those skill gaps and what we're seeing is where AI is going to come in, step in and fill in that for us. So let's just say I have my LMS administrative capability. I can get some requirements together. I can develop a solution. I can work with the vendor and implement that solution, but I'm light on the content approach. I have to come up with a different strategy for a content approach. Yep, I can go hire and outsource that. That was typically the way they've done it before. That's going to cost a ton of money though, and time probably to go back and forth. We just had our user conference about a couple months ago, and one of the things that we were showing and debuting was some of the new content development, AI content development products that we're looking at that we're coming out with next year. And Docebo went through a recent acquisition of a company called Edugo, which focused on AI for learning. We have been building their technology into our platform specifically around content creation. And when we were at our user conference a couple months ago, our VP of AI gave a demo of what that's starting to look like. So I'm going to play a quick video for you. The audio, it's going to be a screen recording, so you'll start seeing our VP of AI, Giuseppe, walk us through an example of what this new, we call it Docebo Shape, what it looks like, and that help that you can bring in to have AI help you develop content if maybe content development is something that you need to crowdsource and enable within your organization. This is within a sales use case. So the first one that we chose to tackle is, I've been talking about customer training, but let's say in your organization you have a sales training organization and you need to create sales training content. That's what this video will show the use case for within this tool. So I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to switch over, we'll play the video, and then we'll come back and then we'll jump into multi-use cases.
Introduce you the new version of Shape. And so just to give you a use case, this is a system that we built with the sales enablement team of Docebo. So it's right now an internal tool where we uploaded all the sales enablement content from Docebo. So let's meet Sarah. Sarah is a content creator in the sales enablement team, and she wants to create a toll truck for elevator pitch. So she wants to create content. So she can find different templates. For example, she can select the toll truck templates. Here she can preview what will be the output of this template. For example, we're going to be content, some activities, and also simulation. So Sarah decides to use this template, and here you have a new interface. This is, we call it a copilot. So this is a new authoring flow where Sarah can talk to the AI system and being able, in a very natural way, to tell to the system what she wants to create. So she can select elevator pitch, and as well what kind of product you want to cover, and for example, Docebo Learning Impact. The AI system has access to a knowledge base and is able to give those suggestions to Sarah because it knows about Docebo and knows all about the products of Docebo. Sarah can go deeper in the topic selection. For example, for the target audience will be L&D manager, and so on and so forth. Once she's satisfied with the topic of the content, she can go to the next stage. And here we have our AI brain that will be able to recall all different documents that right now are unstructured documents. Using the power of AI, we're able to do what's called a semantic search. So we're not only searching for keywords, but searching for pieces of information that represents the specific content that Sarah wants to tackle. And here we can see that already the system has been splitting the topics and creating basically a structure of what will be the output content. So Sarah, of course, can review it, being able to make sure that the content is accurate. And once she's satisfied with that, just press next. By the way, this is super important because if you guys use ChatGPT, sometimes it hallucinates, so things are not grounded to reality, and this way, actually, we can make sure that it's talking the truth. So after a few seconds, the magic happens. So a full learning experience has been created, where at the beginning you have all the learning content that is structured with a specific pedagogical approach. And then you have also learning activities that has been completely generated by AI. So those are learning activities that are created from scratch by AI that follow a specific pedagogical structure. And then last but not least, we have the final activity, which is what we call a virtual role play or a simulation. So you, the learner, once you learn all these new concepts and practice with the activities, can then go in a real scenario, and now we can practice elevator pitch with L&D manager. And so here the AI system is able to simulate what will be a real customer, and therefore the learner is able to have a natural conversation. Very important that we work in order to make the conversation seem natural, so the speed and latency of the speech to text is very fast, and therefore the learner is able to speak naturally with the AI agent, and the AI agent is replying in a way that actually simulates a real conversation that customers will have, because we also integrate in the AI brain Gong transcripts that actually really simulate what is a real conversation for a customer. After the simulation is completed, you can see that the AI system is capable of creating automatically an assessment report. So the assessment report is following the specific parameters and configuration that are from the sales enablement team, and so we are actually embedding those rubrics into the report. So you can see that the AI system is capable of giving different kind of assessment in some criteria that are also like on the semantic base. So if you are actually like managed to pitch different parts of the product, so you can see like there is, for example, introduction, common challenges, which I didn't perform very well, but then company benefit was pretty good in that. So you can see, of course, these assessment reports are also created by AI and can be customized to different use cases. So the possibilities are endless in terms of the kind of use cases for this. Here it's very important that we have also areas for growth, so the learner can go back and then repeat the simulation in order to be able to improve without any specific problems, because you're talking to an AI system.
Okay, so I wanted to show that because in everywhere, where once you get your strategy together, once you have your resources in your team and your skill sets and everything assessed, there's always going to be gaps. And we're living in a great time. That was just an example on the content development side, how AI can come in, step in, and help fill in some gaps in some areas. We'll be moving forward with implementing AI in a lot of different areas, like help with the admin's quality of life, being able to analyze analytics. So any areas where there might be weaknesses within one of those buckets, without a doubt, we will be in a time where we will have specific tools that will be developed to do that. And hopefully we can come away with this just being able to understand how to work through all the different categories and kind of break everything down so that we can generate those requirements for those specific needs. So we're purchasing and using the tools that we want. It may not be Docebo or Docebo Shape. It may be something else for some other reason. That's fine, as long as it's what you need for your requirements so that it'll dictate those solutions. So moving forward out of that, jumping back to where we were, we took a look at single use case. This is some really cool data that we've been looking at this year that's showing it used to be that, for use cases and audiences, in order to be quote secure or simple. It would need to be in different platforms. If I'm doing my internal training, it has to be here. If I'm doing my customer training, it has to be here, and never the twain shall meet. But we're moving into and have been for a long time this do more with less kind of world, and we see the shift happening. Whereas a couple of years ago, the majority of the use cases were single use cases in Docebo platforms, we're now seeing that over 80% of our revenue is coming from customers with 3 or 4 use cases going on the platform. So if we jump back to the slide I had created earlier for the single use case, and we kind of blow that out a little bit across, I just talked about sales training. We looked at a sales training example in Shape, and then, take that, maybe you're at a larger enterprise organization. They have a customer training team developing customer training. They have a sales training team developing sales training, service training team on how to do service training. Each of these have maybe their own groups, their own tools, their own content. This is what we're seeing now starting to come together in an opportunity to seeing an opportunity for them to come together. So if we're focused on function here, for all the green areas, we're reinventing the wheel. If I develop theory, safety, overview, and feature training for a customer, my salespeople are going to need that exact same training, plus maybe the teacher's edition that talks to them about how they need to sell it or give a demo. Same on the service. They're going to need the same material the other people developed, plus how to take it apart, put it back together, that kind of thing. This creates a ton of work if everybody's doing this in different places, because it's easier to keep things separate. It's too confusing to mix up this content. The admins, the price you're paying is that the free lunch that you're paying for is all that content creation rework. The work, you don't just create a training program and then throw it behind you and go on to the next one. I mean, maybe we do, but we all know that's not right. There's ongoing maintenance and support that has to happen with everything that we create. Maintaining parity between everything net new and everything you've created before between systems, all that behavioral support so that people know, hey, if you need this, go here. If you need that, go there. Like salespeople are talking to customers all the time. If they're both talking about the company training they experience, they're going to be talking about 2 different things when this is separate. So all of these things are starting to coalesce along with the benefits of, preventing silos between teams, reducing duplication of efforts, creating this holistic team-owned strategy around training. And then when you're building something this big, getting that high level visibility to justify more, we're seeing that pull together. So this is the generic example equivalent of the multi-use case coming from the slide I had earlier. And then let me, bring that back home to what I had for the single use case around those X-ray analyzers. Once that was deployed and successful, we were able to do environmental health and monitoring customers, our safety and security customers, specialty diagnostics. We're just rinsing and repeating with all these different other portals that those customers can come into within the same platform. So everyone's working within the same content library, but creating all these personalized learnings. And that was internal and external. So we had internal commercial teams using the platform, leveraging the same content we were giving our customers for the customer training side of things. So it really lends itself well to a scalable, expandable model. But I will call out right now my own words of not having a free lunch. So what's the lunch we're paying for here? And that is my kind of call it my conspiracy theory board on the left with all the strings and lines. You look at that and you come into this maybe as a new employee in the org and you're like, what the heck is going on in this confusing thing? And totally recognize that as that spider web builds, it becomes a more complex thing to manage. The key here is complex for who? If an admin network that is enabling this complete solution that everybody's using is enabled properly, they're the ones bearing the brunt of whatever confusion is created. The learners, however, all of these little personas here that are coming into the platform that this Miro diagram represents, they all are having an incredibly simplified experience, and they're who matter. They're the ones that need to come in, take their training, do what they need to do, and get out. So we've shifted the confusion from those that matter to the network that can handle it. And in my next slide, we'll talk about how best to mitigate and handle that. But what's happening here is as long as the platform knows who they are and why they're here, which can be boiled down to simple profile attribute, right? I can give somebody a a field in their profile that says they're internal or external. I can say that they're, part of this org or that org, if that data is coming in from somewhere. We're living in a time where we have tons of data on things. So that's the least of our challenges to take care of. And as long as the platform knows who they are, it knows which one of these experiences or any more can be shown to them. So thinking about it in that modular object-oriented way to just, copy, paste, and scale, really easy to do. And as long as you keep a framework to manage it, you'll be fine. And that brings me to my last slide around governance. There are several approaches to governance. There's the carrot and the stick, two common ones. You can lock everything down in the platform, in any platform probably, to make sure that only certain people can do certain things at certain times. And we had that experience at my last organization. In the organization that last example represents, the other LMS alternative that we had at that company was incredibly locked down. It took a week to launch a course because nobody really had permission to do very much. On the other side, though, there was never really anything new or crazy that happened. Everything did work the way it always was supposed to, because you couldn't really do anything other than a few specific sets of things. That caused so much frustration that it drove a lot of people out of that platform in the favor of flexibility and freedom to be able to move forward at the speed the business needed to move. They sought anybody with a few dollars in their pocket or brain cells can write a good justification on why they need to go a different way if they're unhappy. So I never really took the stick approach with the Docebo multi-use case scenario that you saw before. I chose the carrot. And in doing so, I created a governance council that got a couple of people that were going to keep their head above the clouds, looking at the overall strategy and what everybody was doing, and then focused on enabling people that could go into their respective portals and only care about their own content, their own users, their own rules and features that they had turned on and off. And then we would all agree to, be able to have the freedom to do whatever we wanted in our pieces, but come together on anything that maybe overlapped between us. So this document, or line items, Excel sheet you see thing on the right, we used to have something, stuff that was proceed was green and stuff that was caution was yellow. And we called it the green, yellow, red document before, but that didn't look good on the slide. So we changed it to this icon type thing, but the principle is the same. These are all the things that we're going to let people just do and do whatever because they don't affect anybody else. And if you want to make your kingdom great or a mess, that's on you. Go ahead. And so as all of those different portals built out in Docebo, we had some wonderful things happen and we had some die on the vine. But overall, more grew than didn't go anywhere. And the really cool, to wrap this all up, the really, really cool thing that happened was that in some cases, some of those people that were enabled did some really brilliant things. And they'd come back to the council meeting and share their best practices. And when they did, everyone would say, "Ooh, I want that." So one specific example is when we all came together, I made a promise that I'd never tell another part of the platform that they had to do certain thing a certain way, because what made sense for me may not have made sense for them. And the platform allowed for that kind of flexibility. One of the things was in question was like a course naming convention, right? I said, you can use whatever one you want that makes sense for your business. And so everybody went off and used their own course naming convention. So when you looked at the platform holistically, finding anything by course name wasn't really going to fly. It didn't really have much impact because each group could find what they needed for their own thing. And there was never really a need to transition groups in the beginning, to have one group see another group's stuff, but it was a limitation of the freedom. So after a little while, we had a brilliant person in one of our groups with some Power BI experience figure out a way to leverage the APIs in the platform and create these beautiful live Power BI dashboards. When they did that and started to display the data across to everybody, we noticed some of our charts didn't look right because we didn't have some standard naming conventions in the area. And the greatest thing happened. Somebody came up and said, "Hey, what if we all decide to standardize on a naming convention?" And because it came from the people and it was their idea and not something that was forced down like a stick, these best practices started to bubble up and create the standards, and led to further growth and success. So I really liked how the carrot method worked out better than the stick. And I wanted to share that with everybody, and using tools like this green, yellow, red, or the communication of a team's community to keep everybody moving forward and celebrating those achievements was really what hit the mark with that stuff. So last slide, just some takeaways from everything. I hope somebody was, and it was really fast. We scratched the surface of a lot of stuff. I hope some of it was applicable, and there were things for everybody to take away. Really important to pick the right tools for the right reasons. There's so much you will be able to do yourself, regardless of your skill sets, because there is a lot of help out there. As long as you have the vision, strategy, success criteria, and generate your requirements, you'll be really easy to implement solutions that satisfy those requirements. So definitely enable yourself. I put number one there is like, I think about being a homeowner, and like something happens. I can either call in a professional and it's going to be this much money and they're going to come out and I'm not even going to learn anything. It's just going to happen and I'm going to have to do it again. Or I'm going to go watch some YouTube videos and figure out how to do some light plumbing. I mean, it happens. I think as I've gone on and have been a homeowner for 1-2 decades, I've realized a lot of times it pays off to really just enable myself and do it yourself. And I've seen a lot of that translate to technology building in this role. There's so much out there that can help you be successful, and great communities like the ELB community here and some of the other ones that we're involved with in the industry. Understanding how to scale and always keeping that in mind. You're constantly playing a game of chess, so you need to be moves ahead, whether it's with business conditions, changing leadership, or technology growth. Learning from the journey and watching those changes and being prepared what could happen, trying stuff out in pilots. One thing that has been really beneficial for me is that when some new great feature comes out and so I have new capabilities, maybe not spitting that out to the world really fast, maybe keeping that in the pocket for a little while, because if you keep a few of those in the pocket and a challenge comes along and one of those can be used for that, you're essentially spoon feeding people, and that helps so much with adoption rather than inundating people with a ton of great stuff that may really be awesome but too much to handle. So understanding the complexities of how to scale where it doesn't always seem so intuitive, very important. And last, back to that governance council, creating an environment where you can allow for champions and cool things to bubble up, and crowdsource that innovation, celebrate them, replicate them, templatize them, and establish those best practice standards. So that's it for me. That's what I have. I hope everybody found value in this, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Jay. We do have a couple audience questions I think that we can squeeze in these last few minutes. Going back to kind of your first takeaway about choosing your learning tools, do you have tips on what are the most important things to look for when you're choosing your LMS, and how to get buy-in for an LMS if budget is a key constraint for some of our smaller organizations?
Sure, yeah. And I apologize for probably how much I say it, because it is the IT kind of software, IT systems part of my background that puts the requirements in the solutions. I think you can't go wrong when you look at what you're trying to do and boil those down into, like, I expect my learning management system to be able to do X for a given role Y. And so if you have the roles defined and you have the requirements defined, these are great things to begin the RFP process with a training tool. My second piece of advice on that, because that's kind of like a generic answer. So if anybody thinks that one's a cop-out, here's what I'll say to answer the question a little more directly. More important than any one feature, and I'm working for a learning management system company, but I do see that this is true. A lot of them have a lot of the same things. Like there's gamification and course management. Some are into content creation, some are not. It's like this bell curve, and almost all providers have a lot of the same stuff in the middle. What's been more impactful and important to me is a learning management system that has more flexibility than any one particular feature. I never want to be stuck in a platform again that can't do something. I never want to be in a position where I have a leader say, hey, I need your training platform next year to do this crazy thing. I have to have there be a way for me to figure out how to make that happen, whether it's using a certain set of features in a different way than it was originally intended to, and pushing a part of a platform in a direction that might not be optimal. Being able to have one that's the most flexible is more important than something that may check a single feature box that another one doesn't. So look at those RFP results carefully. And even if one has more checkboxes than another, are they quality checkboxes, or are they, are they something that is covering a lot of areas of flexibility?
Great answer. And I think that ties in kind of well to our last question. What are the learner activities that you should be tracking in order to prove the success of a training program? And do you think those are different depending on whether it's customer or employee training?
Yes, they are definitely different depending on audience and use case, almost always. And I guess you can phase that. So if you're in a training leadership position and you're trying to show metrics to management and you handle multiple use cases, I bet you can find ones that are common across. But when you're building a full evaluation program, you definitely want to be prescriptive about given use cases and roles. There are some great resources out there. I think a colleague of mine that's in charge of our analytics did a sort of independent webinar with a Brandon Hall group about how to stand up an analytics program. There's a great ebook on that. So if you look at Learning Analytics, Docebo, Brandon Hall group, and it's in 2023, you'll find that. If anybody really cares, I can share that for you. I wanted to hit another point. So quality of measurement, like what metrics are important? Are they all the same? A lot of people lean on surveys, and that's been an age-old thing. So like surveying your learners. And then there was like showing improvement by surveying your learners' knowledge before and after. I think that's very popular right now and is innovative right now. Advanced analytics and learning measurement tools that show you great dashboards and give you a before and after training kind of picture for improvement. That's the now. The future, and this is what I've been chasing for a little while. I would love to see some of the advancements that we're having in products and instruments being smart and connected to the internet. They can report things, like you can see when your dryer finishes drying your clothes down in your basement, you get a little message, like these kind of smart instruments. What if I could use these smart instruments to communicate a little bit of data on how they're being used and compare that against the training records of the people using them? Now you have real objective data. So think about this in like a larger, I was in a life science, a manufacturing, scientific organization. We had instruments and labs and scientists using the instruments. The instruments were reporting back behavioral data. So I have the scientist training record, and I have the instrument telling me that there's a discrepancy between, or there's bad behavior, and I have a training course I could recommend. Just connecting that live data to my training campaigns that I'm sending out to people. I think that's the holy grail, because now I'm not relying on a survey or an opinion or what somebody thinks about what they do. I'm relying on real things. So connecting that Internet of Things to my content and my records, that's what I'm chasing.
That's the dream, or maybe the nightmare for those of the employees who aren't behaving properly.
But the lunch we'll be paying for that, the lunch we're paying for will be the correct management and integrity of that data, and probably any data concerns that a lot of people will have about transferring that. But we will work through that, I'm sure.
Yeah, the future of training. All right, those are all the questions we have from the audience. Thank you so much, Jay, for joining us and sharing this with us today. And thank you to our attendees for joining us over your lunch or morning, evening, depending on where you are. We appreciate seeing all of you, and hopefully we'll see you all again on another webinar soon.
Thank you very much,
everyone. Bye.